So we wanted to, during our town hall time, we wanted to cover four important sort of areas. The first one is I wanted to bring you up to speed in terms of where the whole process of our exploration began and what we have been through so far and where we are currently. And before I even go any further, for those who are not fully caught up, what we are talking about here is the potential merger with Embrace Church, who shares the building here. And they have been here a while, and so I'll give you a little bit of background on that in a moment, but an opportunity was presented to both congregations where we could explore the possibility of becoming one church. So that's what we are talking about during this time. So the first portion is going to be to bring you up to speed in the journey that has taken so far. The second part of today will be to share briefly with you some of the findings that we acquired through the survey. We conducted a survey to be able to gather some of your thoughts, that you may share both your concerns, your joys about what this potential represents, what this exploration means to all of us. And we wanted to share some of those results today, or at least a general overview of what the survey taught us. The third part that I wanted to share with you today was to talk about what all of this means in terms of our vision as a church. And I think this is an important component to anchor our conversations about what we are here to do as a church. Because I do believe this is it's an essential element of pursuing anything, whether we make decisions in one direction or another. Who we are and what we are called to do as a church should inform those decisions. And lastly, the last fourth portion that I want to open it up to all of you, that you can share maybe things that you did not get a chance to share in the survey, questions that you've been thinking about, and concerns, or even your excitement about the prospect of becoming a new church through this process. And so we have those four portions. So let me begin with catching you and bringing you up to speed in terms of how the whole process of the merger began. Well, you have it in the screen there. So, for those who are not part of the vision committee, because the vision committee that was formed in order to spearhead this exploration, we've been talking about this all these months. So sometimes it's easy to forget that some of the basic details are important to bring into remembrance. Last July, and this is not coincidentally, but also the same time that I began my appointment here at our wonderful church, Twin Towers United Methodist Church, we began an exploration to see the possibility and the implication of becoming one church with Embrace. And in full disclosure, why this was prompted in the first place, and I think it's important to recognize this, is because at the time there were financial concerns on both churches about the financial sustainability of our ministries. And when those challenges are presented, oftentimes one of the recourses that our annual conference has taken before is to bring two congregations when the circumstances are right, to aid in and to boost the financial sustainability, to allow the ministry to rise from that boost. With that said, as you can probably tell, exploring a potential merger for the sole purpose of financial viability is not the best reason. And that's important to recognize. Thankfully, and I think these are the moments when we get to recognize that even though within our human institutions we have people leading, we also believe in God's intervention and God utilizing these positions of authority and people within the leadership structure to guide the local church in its mission and its path. And the reason why I can tell you this is because even though at the very beginning, when the potential for our merger was presented, it was given really as a directive and to be done post-haste, as soon as the appointment year began in July. But as we gathered and began conversations about what this would mean, even then, I think people, generally speaking, from both sides, there was a sense of a positive hope that this could really be good for both churches. But at the same time, we had hesitations, we had reservations, not about the idea in itself, but about the process, about the steps that we needed to take together as a church, as both churches, to arrive at this with both eyes open and with a healthy sense of the commitment that we have to make and what it would mean for the mission and the vision of our churches. So we brought these concerns up, and while at the beginning this had begun as a directive, wisdom on everywhere prevailed, and we were told that we should take our time. We should take our time to explore what this means and what this process would entail. So that's where we began this path, and I can tell you this was truly, and I felt personally at least, that God was in the midst of this process, because that time would mean that we could now, as individual churches, both Twin Towers and Embrace, come together to the table to talk about what this means and to decide in every regard what steps we needed to take or not take if that was the conclusion of our conversation. So this is when we decided to put together a vision committee that would have representatives of both churches, that we may begin an exploration of the potential merger. And we began with simple questions. Why should we do this? Why should we do this? We were presented with a very practical and simple reason in the beginning: to have financial sustainability. And I did say that was not a good reason, the sole good reason to pursue a merger, but it is a reason. I think it is important to recognize that it is a reason, because ministry is done through resources. And at the end of the day, those are needed in order to pursue the work that we do here in serving our community and sustaining the ministry that we have. But we wanted to set that aside because we didn't want that to be the primary reason why we come together. So we began asking this question: why should we do this? What are the reasons that we should pursue this? And we began asking other more specific questions. What do we gain? What do we lose? What does it mean then for the identity of our church to pursue this? And that prompted us to ask the question: is who we are. Who are we as a church? What are the values and traditions that are important to us? What are the missions and the works that are important to us. How do we express our identity in the work that we do in the midst of our community? What are the strengths and weaknesses of each church? How does the other church, if we were to do this, how does the other church complement one another in becoming this new church? And ultimately, what are the things that, and as I mentioned, briefly, a moment ago, what would we lose through this process? What do we have to give up in order to take this process forward? And a lot of good conversations happen, and we begin to identify some of the strengths that each of our churches had. And although we had some larger, more extended conversations, I can tell you in a brief summary that one of the most important things that rose out of this is that for Twin Towers, one of the things that we were seeking, that we felt we needed, was to fill in the gap of the multi-generational ministry that we believed to be healthy and relevant for anyone seeking to be part of a church community. And as you know, Embrace is mostly comprised by young families with children. And that was an important element of becoming a multi-generational church. We felt that that was a strength that they would bring into the new makeup that we would develop. Yes, and on the other hand, Embrace was lacking a sense of rootedness, a connection to the local community, and how they can be involved with organizations in the local community and the neighbors, and a history of serving the needs of the community. They have, of course, passion to serve and to be able to reach out and extend themselves to be a positive sort of resource for the people around them. But those things don't just happen overnight. We develop those relationships. A church develops those relationships and grows them over time. And that is something that Twin Towers has not only developed but maintained in its long history, and continues to have a very profound passion even today in serving our community and being a resource to the people around us. And that's something that newer churches oftentimes have takes a lot of time to develop and don't have right at hand. And so at a very simple, immediate glance, we could see that even those two elements were coming together very nicely in creating this new, potentially creating this new community that we were exploring. And so, as we continued to do that, we felt that it was important for us to not only simply present this potential to everyone, but to first experience for ourselves, little by little, what it would mean to come together as a new community. So we felt that we needed to explore this in stages. So one of the first steps that we took was to bring together a joint worship on a monthly basis, so that at the end of each month, starting when this decision was made, that we would come together in a joint worship service, and we've been part of these 3 times now, so that we would experience, and I think there is sometimes no replacement for that experience of being in person or having that personal experience of coming together in worship with a community that we are potentially looking to be one with, and to have fellowship with them and so forth. So we begin that. The next stage of that, and this is by the way, this is an ongoing process. This particular portion is an ongoing process of experiencing for ourselves what it would mean to do ministry and worship together and to be in fellowship with one another. And that was the first stage of that particular process step. There are others coming towards the end of this month, especially through the Lent season, where we want to introduce joint small groups. We want to introduce small groups that are comprised of people from Twin Towers and Embrace, and do a Lenten study together, and see what it means to not only be in worship together, but be in spiritual formation together. We've also been more proactive about being in bringing Embrace folks into the ministries, especially Dine and Connect that we've been doing, to know what it would feel and mean to collaborate and to actually share in those ministry spaces together. Of course, there is more room, not only to explore further possibilities of outreach and mission together, but also in thinking about doing those things in ways that we haven't before on our own. So that's an ongoing process, as I said, that we felt it was important as we think, each of us think of what it means to come together as a church, that we would have that personal experience, in-person experience of being in worship and ministry and fellowship with the other church. Through that process, then we also found that it was time now to collect some more specific thoughts from people, voices to be heard, regarding concerns and joys they may have and excitements they may have about the prospect of becoming a new church. So we created a short survey, and we launched that beginning of December, and we opened it up for a little over 2 weeks that we may collect the results, and we received some results. Now, I will share, because I do want to be very, I want to give full disclosure of those important components in all the important steps that we are taking, that when we received the results of the survey, in some ways, we received a good amount of results, of people turning in their survey results. And in some others, we felt, are we missing anybody? Because as you know, the constituency and membership of a church is one thing. It looks one way. A number is one thing when you look at it on paper, and it's another thing when you try to count the people that are here on Sundays actively engaged on a weekly basis. And so we hope that more people, especially those who are not active every Sunday, would take part. And we want to keep the channel of communication open, of course, through this whole process, so that anybody that wants to share anything through this process will be able to do that at any time. But that being said, because we wanted at least a strong indication of where we are as a church, we wanted to gather as much as possible through this survey. We received a total of 18 entries online and 2 entries by paper, hard copies. So that was a total of 20 that we received through this survey. We received, on the Embrace side, unfortunately, also there was some responses, and on that side we gathered 12 responses on the Embrace side. And like I mentioned, I know there are more people that could give us feedback and share their thoughts on this process. With that said, those who are engaged actively and have expressed thoughts because they are very intentionally following this process, I believe this does represent the majority of those people that are actively engaged in this process have voiced their thoughts. And like I said, we're not closed in the intake of any of people's opinions and thoughts in this process. So if at any point in this journey you wish to share something with the vision team or with me even, please feel absolutely free to do that, and we will certainly take it into consideration and bring it into the body. Now, in sharing some of the general sort of findings, Steve, did you want to share a little bit about this, or would you like me to just go ahead and share some of the thoughts that we have? Yes. No, but I was asking if, Steve, you wanted to share something about this, or if you want me to just proceed. Okay, all right. Sorry. Uh, so, we asked several questions, and I think one of the things that we wanted to identify was, are there any challenge areas that we must address immediately, things that represent sort of roadblocks that we need to address? And unfortunately, in terms of any concerns representing roadblocks, we did not find any, at least that were submitted through the survey. We did identify, however, areas where people felt were, or aspects of our church and church ministry that we felt were very important to everyone, to either preserve or to pay attention to as we move into this process of the merger. First, in asking how people felt, generally speaking, about the merger of the two churches, the vast majority, we are talking about most, and we're looking at 17 out of the 20 that gave an overwhelming 5 of, we love this idea. And then we had some that were in the middle range that said, they could lean either way. So in essence, at least we can start with this, is that the people that have submitted the survey feel in their majority overwhelmingly favorable and excited about the prospect of this merger. In terms of the aspects of our congregation's traditions and practices that are most important to us as a church, I think the one that rose to the top was our worship, and specifically our worship style. And this was definitely a very interesting sort of element, because later there is another question that asks the question of, what are you excited to experience from the other church in terms of aspects of ministry and so forth? And also we had more than half people responding that they wanted to also experience their worship style. So I think it's generally speaking, this tells us that we consider this time of gathering very important to our sense of who we are, to our sense of church, and that we are also open to experiencing new things as a church in terms of our worship. How do we feel as a church that this could strengthen our community? And I think this was mostly all of us landed on having more diversity in the congregation. We felt that this would really benefit the diversity of the congregation, and diversity in itself is a very great virtue to have in a church, because it means that we get to do ministry in a broader way and to be able to serve and reach more people. Which brings me to the other element that people responded to, is that we felt that we would have a broader impact in the community through this merger. Concerns about the two separate congregations becoming one, bringing the two congregations together. The one that about half the people responded that the concern was the differences in worship styles. Again, this being an important element of our church, there was concerns about worship styles coming together. The other concern was preservation of traditions and practices that we have in our church. Those were the top two that were mentioned. What should we emphasize as we move forward? And some of these might feel a little bit repetitive, but we wanted to do some overlap questions so that we can identify things that we felt strongly about. Again, the one that rose to the top was worship services, that we wanted to emphasize this. And I can make a comment about this, because we are looking at this not just from because generally speaking, in the process of merger, as much as it is important to preserve traditions and practices within the church, a greater focus for people who are willingly entering into a process of merger should be the development or the creation of new traditions and new practices that is going to represent this new congregation that we are arriving at. And but with that said, I want to say that in the beginning of this process, the worship service is going to be a very important sort of time to forge this new identity. So when we say that what aspect of the church church life and we should emphasize as we move forward. If we say worship services, I am in complete agreement, and I think most of you said that this is an emphasis that we should have as we move forward. I would want to affirm that because this is going to be an important time. It's the most practical and immediate time where we get to shape a new identity for our congregation as if we were to proceed in this direction. So that's the emphasis that everybody wanted to remarked on. Other important things that we mentioned, what specific traditions or practices from the other congregations that you find appealing. As I mentioned before, half people responded that they were interested in their worship style, and along with that, some fellowship along with that. And the rest is a little bit mixed between experiencing how the other church does outreach and ministry and how they do fellowship events as well. We wanted you to express if you had any suggestions about fostering unity and building relationship, and I think we wanted to have more joint fellowship events, and I think that's definitely something that we can pursue. And in the months to come, more joint fellowship events. And as I mentioned before, other things that we mentioned were small groups and studies together, collaborative mission projects, and those are definitely coming as we feel that it's an important part of this exploration. How can we create a welcoming, inclusive environment for the merged congregation? Most of us responded and saying that incorporating our worship styles, the diverse worship styles, and that's language-wise a little bit of a misnomer because we have two worship styles. It's not like we have like 5 or 6 that we need to incorporate. For the most part, we have a somewhat traditional setting here at Twin Towers, and Embrace has a relatively contemporary style of worship, and definitely it's one of the priorities to see how we can create a good intersection or arrive at a style that that can represent both. And then we asked a question about, this was for more practical reasons, which service time everyone would prefer. And while there were some answers that still wanted to keep the 9:30 a.m., a few people that wanted to have the 9:30 a.m., most people, at least more than half, wanted to something in the middle of the two services right now, which would be the 10:30, which is the time when we've been having our joint services on a monthly basis. So that's the one. And there were a couple of people that suggested that we should keep 2 separate services, one in the earlier morning and in the later morning, as is currently with our Twin Tower service and the Embrace service later on. And I wanted to share other lastly, some not miscellaneous, but things that were not in like big categories, other concerns or rather emphasis that people felt that needed to be or rather things that we needed to emphasize or pay attention to especially, was in how to blend our leadership, structure, so that we can have a good mix of people from currently from both churches, and to ensure that the both churches' ministries are honored in this way as we move forward. Okay. So in summary, it looks like we mostly are very excited about the prospect of the churches coming together. We do have some concerns about the worship style, worship being so important to both of our congregations, that we should pay attention in how to bring those worships together, and to pay attention to the ministries that we are going to be doing together, so that they are relevant and they have an impact to us and the people around us as we come together. All right. So before we move to the next thing, Steve, did you want to add anything? I keep asking Steve, because he is part of the Vision Committee, and I wanted to make sure that as a representative of the Vision Committee that I'm not missing anything important, and that if he has anything to add from the perspective of the Vision Committee, who has been a little bit more involved from the beginning through this process. So. Okay. Okay. All right. Sounds great. Okay. So we bring it to the next part, the next portion of it, which is a conversation about the vision of the churches. As I mentioned in the beginning of this process, it was important for the vision team and for myself as well to identify what's the core vision that really drives and brings passion to our congregations, both our congregations. And because even though there are, as a Christian church, I'll say, it's difficult to think that there will be visions that are contradictory to one another, right? Because our foundation really is Jesus, and what he did and what he wanted to do for the people around him, and through the movement that he was starting through the church. So it's difficult to imagine there would be contradictory visions from any church. That being said, visions can be a little bit distant from one another, meaning that they have a scope and a reach that is a little bit separate from one another, to the point where bringing those two together can be a strain when we don't have all the resources to do that. So because of that, we felt it was important to identify the core visions that are important to each of our congregations. And we express this vision in many different ways. And for if you have sort of read any of the things that we put out there, I think one very important aspect of our Twin Towers community is to be a community that is called to be conduits of healing and justice in this world, in our community and in this world. And that's something that not only is the very thing that drives the ministries that we have, but also inspires us to find to do new things and to maintain and sustain things that we have in the midst of our ministry. And this has been, and I think whether you have those same exact words in your head all the time or not, this is something that permeates the entirety of our ministry, and in one way or another you have it within yourself to recognize this when you see it, and to know that this is an essential value that we have in our church. In the On the other hand, and I wanted to share what the other church's core vision and identity really revolves around as well, so that we may sort of see how these things can start to come together. For Embrace, one aspect that has been really important in driving their ministry is to be able to reach the unchurched and the dechurched. This is something that's driven the ministry of Embrace from the very beginning, is to be able to share the love of Christ with people that have either left the church or have been displaced by bad experiences, or simply because in growing up they felt like they didn't want to go to church anymore, and then they realized later they were missing a community, but they just didn't know how to come back to church. And so that's been part of their core mission in reaching the unchurched and dischurched through their ministry. When you put those things together, we have the ideals of healing the world and to reach the people who are unchurched in this church. These represent the core sort of values, essentially, or the missional sort of essence of each of our churches. And I think I can safely say, and I'm very pleased that I can say, that these are not apart, but they're close enough that we can come together and start building around this vision together, to serve the community that we have around us, and to expand and to grow the ministry based on these core values that we have as a church. How we have been living this in each of our churches, what's the missional approach that we have taken in living out this core value that we have in each of our churches? Well, for Twin Towers, we have tried to have many ministries that serve the needs of the community, and like Dine and Connect, Midway Shelter, and the ones that we even do on seasonally, like participating in the warming shelter, for example, through this winter season, and others that we do on a seasonal basis. Some, even when I came in, I know there was a group, and we had to take a pause on this for a little while, but we know that there was a group meeting that were very concerned about environmental issues, about the stewardship of resources, beginning with our community and beyond and so forth. And whenever we have a chance to serve the homeless community and those that are affected by disasters and problems, we are very eager always and passionate in jumping into that effort. So we live it out in as many ways as we can, engaging in ministries and partnering with people in our community and organizations in our community to fulfill that. For the Embrace side, the missional approach they have chosen was to focus on Christian education, because they've identified that one of the biggest segment of unchurched and dischurched people that are out there right now are millennials, and a lot of them right now are in that age where they're married and having kids and raising young children, and in bringing those people into the church, one of the most important elements is, if I go, will my child have a good time in church? Will they be able to engage with friends and learn and have a great time in the program over there? And that is true. That's oftentimes that is a very important thing that that generation is looking for. So the missional approach has been to focus on Christian education and to develop the next gen ministries, and trying to provide a space for that generation of people seeking to be part of a church community. So, and when you bring those two together, you realize that not only the mission that now produces a missional approach to our core values, is not distant at all. But they synergize rather well, because those are elements are both elements are very needed, almost foundationally needed in the ministry of a church, to be able to engage and serve the community. Because if we are a church that only focuses on themselves and not able to serve the community around us, then we are very much missing on a critical part of our identity as Jesus followers. And also, if we don't have a way to invite people and say, this is a place where you can grow with your family and see this as your family, and grow in your faith and become equipped to serve the community around you. We're talking about Christian education at this point. Then we are also missing something important in the church. So in many ways, these are things that synergize rather well and are almost, I would say, foundational for a good and healthy ministry. So how will we express this in a new way? Well, that is still the work that is ahead of us. But I felt it was important that we start with the core or the essence of how we see ourselves, from a vision standpoint, from a missional approach that we have had, and to be able to see that these things can come together, and we can emerge with something new out of this the two different approaches or two different missions that we've held so close and dear to each of our churches. And as I said, this is going to be a process that is going to, now we're more intentionally launching into. From a step standpoint, I did wanted to say the survey was very important in helping us identify whether we needed to take a pause, whether we needed to say, hey, before we continue, there are some very important things that we need to address before we even think about taking any step further. That was not the case. I think we're all on the same page in terms of, or at least we feel like we are moving in the right direction, and we feel very enthusiastic and recognize the positive potential that this has. We have identified some things that we want to pay attention to, which are things that are indeed part of an important part of the process already, which is to find an expression of worship that is going to honor and to be relevant for both congregations. And now this vision component, that the emphasis that we've had in each of our congregations are not very distant, that they are complementary, and that they can work together to really build the foundational blocks, strong foundational blocks for this new congregation. Now what is left ahead of us in terms of the process is twofold. One is that we need to continue to think and pray about what this new vision is going to look like. Is it going to look vastly different from what we've talked about? No. For not only for practical reasons, but to say that we want to move away from these two things that we have identified would be untrue to who we are. So it's going to be something that intersects and brings those two things together. And while the answer might be just right ahead of us, it is important that we arrive there together in prayer and through worship and fellowship together. So that's going to be an important step, and we're not going to only do that through the vision committee that's meeting, but also by coming together in our mission and outreach whenever we can, to do them together and to be able to do spiritual formation together and continue to have fellowship together, so that our meeting of, not only we have a meeting of minds, but a meeting of hearts in this process. The other steps that we need to take are more administrative and practical in nature. At the end of the month, the vision team is going to meet again, and we are going to put together 3 different, administrative groups that are going to look into those very specific areas that need to come together from an administrative standpoint for our church. And those are our church finances, our leadership structure, and our worship. Now, the worship style, that we're going to begin as soon as we can. We don't need to wait until the end of the month to start doing that. And then we'll bring together the worship groups together. And if you want to share something with the worship group, worship teams of each church, you can share that with me. You can share that with the people that are in there. And we're talking about Anne, Luca, and anyone from the vision team, by the way. And we'll also, and Embrace will be doing the same thing. So the three areas: finances, leadership structure, and worship. And if we can get these groups together and arrive at a sort of a midpoint where we feel that from an administrative standpoint we feel ready to take the next step, I think that will be a good progress on our end. So we'll be giving you some specific details in the weeks to come about who we are trying to bring together in those specific groups, and so that you can participate. If you feel called to participate in those specific aspects of the exploration, then I want to absolutely welcome you to that and encourage you to participate in the leadership of this process. All right, it's been a little longer than I wanted, but I do want to absolutely take the rest of the time that we have so that we can share right now any thoughts, any questions, any concerns, any excitements that you have about this process we are in. So yeah, I'll just open this time for you. Yes. This is mic 14. There, thank you.
I'll pass the mic around too, but I'm excited about the merger because I see a lot of energy coming in from Embrace. And if anybody attended the luncheon a couple weeks ago, and if there was a family here for the first time with kids, they'd have seen a whole lot of kids having a whole lot of fun. There's a lot of kids. There was one kids table where they spent the whole luncheon laughing and just having a good time with the games we were playing and things. So a lot of energy.
Thank you.
I have been a part of the church for 90 years. I'm 92, but the first 2 years were kind of a waste of time. And I find this to be one of the most exciting things. I've never been in a church, in a congregation that merged with another church. This is new for me, but it's absolutely exciting. First of all, we're doing here this morning and been leading up to this what every congregation probably ought to do every 10 years or so, and that is examine our mission. Why are we here? What are we doing? And those are the kind of questions that we're talking together with the Embrace Church about. What does it mean for our congregations to come together in this strategic corner in Alameda and be part of the community, ministering to the community. So this is a good process, even if it didn't end in a merger. It's good that we're asking these serious questions about what it means to be a congregation in a city like this. So I'm absolutely happy to be part of this process. It's a good process. It's good for each of us to be doing this. And I also want to thank Pastor Jacob for his leadership, his vision, and his sense of ministry. You've been a great help to us, and want to thank you for that. So I for one, I vote for merger. I think it's a right thing to do. Steve, I'll give this back to you.
What I think about this merger thing is this is a pretty good idea because it brings new people together, new faces. Actually gets this church has some energy in it because it was a bit empty without seeing new faces. You get to learn about other people, then you get to do some fun stuff, and we can also need some help in the kitchen. Yeah, but yeah, it's a pretty rad idea. So I got my vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is relevant, I promise. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was to hang out with my grandparents' generation, which was, they were children during the Depression. They came of age during the Second World War. Both my father's parents were veterans, actually, of the Navy. It's how they met. And I just like hanging out with these people. And I cannot even to this day define fully why, but it was one of the most precious things for me. And one of the frustrations with church is that oftentimes, even when you have a multi-generational church, people are not crossing those boundaries. The kids are in groups by 2-year age sort of categories and all that sort of thing. And I don't know, I feel like one of the nicest things that's going to come out of this merger, because I've just sort of had a feeling it is going to happen for a while. It's felt very as a fairly newcomer, I've always been like, what are we waiting for? This feels notable. So, but is that I think that Embrace is really going to benefit from our elders here in this congregation, because I feel like we're a little less stratified in our attitudes than a lot of American society can be around generations. And I think that's going to be really important. We need, as people growing up, and I'm 40 now, so I'm sort of in the middle of all that, I need to be hanging around with little kids. I need to be hanging around with these Gen Zers who are hitting their mid-20s now. I need to be hanging out with people who are, my grandparents have passed on, but people who, are the age they were when they passed on a few years ago, you know what I mean? And I think our little kids need it too. So that's something I'm really looking forward to seeing to happen. And I know sometimes when we're part of a congregation that's a little older, churches can be like, we need more young people. But I would like to ask all of us to think about what we, and especially, my elders here, have to offer to the young people that will be joining us and that we will be joining. And, that God can prepare our hearts for that, wherever we are in our growth and where we are in life, because everyone has something to offer and our elders have so much to give. And I think we live in a society that tends to forget that and tends to focus on youth so much, to the detriment of like wisdom, experience, and that sort of thing. So I'm very excited about it. And I think if I had any concern, it would be that one thing I really like about this church is that anyone can just walk in off the street and hang out with us. There are people who come in when they know we're having our fellowship afterwards just to get some snacks because that's the only lunch they're going to get today. And no one here acts like it's weird. No one here treats anyone different, but also no one here gets all super hyper excited, like, let me get you involved in church. There's no recruiting. We treat people like they are people. We humanize people here. And as long as that doesn't change, I think whatever else happens will be fine, because that's the heart of Christ and that's the heart of God, So that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to just sneak through.
Hi, just two things. One, I hope that part of the plan includes really making this church a focal point of the downtown area, from a community center. I'm not going to say 24 hours a day, but a lot of the day, so that it's thought of not as just a place of worship, which is its primary situation, but also as important to the community. And the second thing I would ask is, I've been attending the church for a few years, and I've never really understand beyond the office of the pastor what the leadership structure is and how the leaders are selected. So you don't have to comment today about that, but from the administrative group, I would really like to understand the selection of leadership, lay leaders, trustees, etc., beyond the office of the pastor. And thank you. I think this is very positive. I know it takes a lot of work. And I do appreciate the work that's gone in.
Thank you. I do want to make a quick comment about specifically the leadership portion. And overall, the entire process, something that the CEO was mentioning, that something like this, not the not a merger itself, but a process of reviewing who we are at church and what we do, why we do the things that we do, and how we do them. I think every church, I agree, every church should do them every 10 years or so, or even more frequently than that, so that everyone who is involved here understands how we operate as a church and why we do the things that we do. And I do know that in the process of this exploration and this pursuit, one thing that we will make sure to include it so that everybody's part of that is that we know how we are arriving at this new leadership structure, what our reasoning is behind it, and how we are electing these new leaders to be to represent the needs and the interest and the leadership of the rest of the church. And so I think this is going to be a process that really does inform that for those who are not who don't know a lot about that the Methodist sort of tradition of how we elect leaders, and we will follow some of some of those ways because they are part of we are a Methodist church and we do follow the Book of Discipline for these matters that are very important. But also there are some areas of flexibility where we can express our leadership structure in a way that is relevant to the needs of our congregation here in the city of Alameda, in this place where we are. So thank you. Yeah.
I'm in favor of the merger. I would like to make sure that the healing prayer team continues and perhaps becomes a bit more known, because I think some people might think we're no longer offering prayers, but we are, and that's something that I care a lot about, and I think we would like to continue that. Also, I'd just like a reminder, I probably should know this, but who is on the vision team?
Yes, so so two things. I do want to say, just in case there's any confusion, today's is an information and question asking and sharing sort of time at the town hall. It's not a vote-taking town hall meeting, because that comes a little bit later. We have one more step to take before we can conclude that it's time for an official vote. An official vote of this kind will come through a church conference where every member of the church is invited to come and cast their vote on both sides. So that's going to come at a later time, and we'll figure the exact timing of that. But there's one more step to take before we can arrive at that. So, and the other, what was the other thing that sorry? Oh yes, who's on the vision team? So for the Twin Tower side, we have Steve Gardner, and we have Patty Yamashita, and we have Deacon Mike representing the Twin Towers sort of side of on the vision team. And on the Embrace team, we had Clarissa Lewis, Hans Cho, and we had Lulu Sapigao, but she last year, towards the end of last year, she started full-time work at a different church. So we're in the process of finding a new person for that. That being said, because now that we are entering into more administrative explorations, because we have to not only think about the general atmosphere of the pulse of where we are in terms of wanting to come together or not, but we have to explore the viability, the administrative viability of this. We will be including more people in the leadership of this process. So as I mentioned, that announcement is going to come towards the end of the month, where we are launching those 3 different groups that are going to do the financial viability, essentially assessment for both churches, and an exploration of a new leadership structure and so forth. So those will also becoming annexed in some way to the vision team moving forward. Yes.
I'm also very happy to see this happening. I hope it will happen. It will bring diversity and two definite age groups together that will make a whole community. This would be the second merger of churches for some of us. There's not a whole lot of us left. But one question, when Santa Clara Church and First Church merged, both churches were dissolved and it was given a new name.
Yeah.
This is, I guess, through the discipline or a technical thing. What happens with that if this happens?
That situation remains the same. We would essentially we would come with a new name. Now, technically speaking, because Embrace Church does not have an official charter, it's recognized by the conference as its own entity and a church, but it does not have a charter like TTUMC does. So technically speaking, we would be absorbing Embrace into the charter of Twin Towers, but for the purpose of shaping the new identity, it was recommended to us that we would arrive at a new name for this merged church. That's part of the process, and if it's very important. I know it sounds just like a name, but it is really important, and we will absolutely keep you in the loop when it's time for all of us to come together to start praying about a new name. We're not there yet quite, because we need to, I think it's important that we have a longer time to process, to pray about the vision, because if anything, that name should emanate from that process of praying about the vision together. So, yeah.
Hi. So before Dean and I came here, we were over at Lake Merritt. And then when we came over here, now there's a new pastor. And they combined with Lake Park.
Yeah.
So, because the pastor there would leave her service and then she'd have to walk all the way across town to go to Lake Park. So it can be done. And it's now Lake Merritt, they have a very full conference, which is great.
Yeah.
And lots of age difference.
I do want to make a comment about this. I wanted to make it earlier, and I'm not referencing any specific merger that has happened, but oftentimes, and what I have observed in our conference is that sometimes when mergers happen, they happen because one church is in a place of closure, meaning they are coming to the end of the lifespan of the church, and in order to preserve the legacy and the history of the church, we have actually sort of essentially utilized the process of a merger to do that. That's not what is happening right now, which is very good, which is actually a very encouraging setting for us, because we are not being asked to merge two churches because one is closing down, because one simply can't sustain itself. I mean, we would struggle, but we could go on our own. I do want to say that. We would find some struggle, but it is entirely possible for each church to continue to go their own path. But we are in the same building. We have needs that complement each other. And as we have explored through the vision, it turns out that we are not far apart from one another. And I think that is a unique opportunity. It is a very special opportunity, and this is one of the reasons why I believe that this is not just a result of circumstance or situations that we find challenging, but I absolutely believe that there is a very special call that God has placed, a plan that has been placed here for us to undertake and to see into fruition in this journey. So, yeah. Any other questions that you may have, or yes? Yes.
I just wanted to make a comment for sharing from the people, Thanksgiving. I just want to combine it with Chris Tricemas. of sharing from the people our cultural, our food, our ethnicity, and diversity, and kind of share like Chinese New Year's or Cinco de Mayo, kind of symbolize our cultural America and who we are and where we're from, and kind of share our cultural, our feelings, our clothing, our food, and kind of combine with not just our cultural but America, kind of like St. Patrick's Day, Cinco de Mayo, and kind of explain who we're from and try to get along with our people, like how we have Black History or Cinco de Mayo, but kind of combined it with Pride and Equal. So again, I just want to make us like more like Pride and Equal, not stating like Black History or Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day, but more kind of like combination Pride and Equal, like university or diversity with our different cultural ethnicity. Again, just to kind of combine it like a like Chex Mix or smoothie, just kind of combined it with the covenant with God. So again, I just wanted to, going back to sharing from the people, I can kind of combined it with Pride and Equal, but not kind of symbolize gays or 4th of July or St. Patrick's Day, but more like a combination of 4th of July, the mix of our cultural. Again, thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, I think it's time, and but please remember that if you have any questions, any concerns, anything you would like to share regarding the process or anything else, absolutely feel free to contact me or share that with, or even share that with any person in the vision team as well. So.